Okay, right. So we're gonna kick off so that we stick to time, and we'll just let folks in as they join. So, morning everybody. For those that I don't know, my name's Leon Mundy. I'm a scaling up coach with the International Scaling Up Coaching Organisation. We've got a really important topic this morning. Really, I think relevant topic around cash and how we scale up cash in our business, particularly given the tough times that we might face coming up. I'm joined on the line by Neil Lewis. Neil heads up the global 20,000 Scale Up program on behalf of Scaling Up, and is a super experienced coach, and will help us through some of this stuff this morning. So glad to have Neil on the call. So let me just bring up the slide deck and then we can jump on in. So as we go through, we're a fairly small group as we go through. If you've got questions you want to ask, please do raise a hand or put them in the chat. We'll try and make sure we cover all of the questions that we can. So cash. We are going to focus today on the element of cash that we cover in Scaling Up. So Scaling Up, for those of you who don't know, is a global organization focused on helping SMEs to scale with less drama. We are lucky to be headed up by a guy called Vern Harnish, who wrote the book that you see on the screen. And the summary there, really important. Many businesses start up, thousands and thousands of businesses start up, but not many scale up. And there are a bunch of reasons why that happens. The four key things that we look at within Scaling Up are people, and have you got people who are engaged and happy in the business. Strategy, so have you got a strategy that's driving revenue and growth? Are you executing that strategy? Because that's where people often fall down. They spend a lot of time planning it and then not doing it. And then really importantly, cash. Have you got the cash you need to fuel the growth of the business? We really believe that cash is the oxygen that keeps your business alive and gives you the options that you need to scale. So today, really going to focus and double down on the cash topic. So what we're going to go through is we'll give you a really useful practical tool to take away to think about planning your cash. Scaling Up's all about kind of practicality and simple one-page tools. So we'll give you something there that you can use immediately. We'll help you to find cash that you've already got in your business. So that sounds a bit weird, I know, but it's something that we really believe all businesses have the opportunity to find more cash. And we'll help you to improve your team's understanding of what they do that affects cash through your business. I'm sure you've all got some examples around that you could share. So why is it relevant? So the reason we're doing this now, a recent McKinsey report came out that said that businesses that do well through difficult recessionary times, and they look back at the 2008 recession, they looked at the pandemic, the businesses that do well are the businesses that move early on this stuff. So businesses that kind of really grow improve their margins, that invest at the right times, that balance things like their liabilities with their margins. They are the businesses that really kind of succeed and do really well through these difficult periods. And the key takeout on that really is the businesses that do best are the ones that go early, the ones that get their ducks in a row in advance so that they've got the kind of headroom that they need to carry themselves through the uncertain times that we might be facing. So we think it's really relevant to be talking about this topic now. So let's just put some thoughts in the chat or call out, whichever you prefer. We are going to head into some challenges. We need to help our businesses survive and thrive. What are the challenges? What do you think the likely challenges are that your businesses will face as we enter the sort of tougher economic climate and slow down? Put some ideas in the chat for us, and we'll see what people are thinking about. Or, like I say, come off mute and talk.
What do you want here, Leon? Do you want, how you might effectively have?
Just what stuff, Chris? So what stuff do you think is going to come up? So Lindsay said increased salaries posing a real challenge. Definitely. So I know I'm talking to a lot of businesses at the minute that are saying, my costs are going up, my demand or my sales might be going down. But you know what? My team need more money because of the cost of living crisis. So, really relevant. Cost of living, Alex. Cost of living for participants, really relevant. What else have we got? That makes sense, Chris.
Mine's lack of experience, qualified workforce.
Yeah, great. So we've got a really high employment, haven't we? So finding great people, there's not the amount of people out there that maybe there was in the past. So we've got that real constriction on people, and guess what? People want more money for them. So you might be paying more for lower quality people. So it's a really good one, Alex. Roger, increased costs that we can't control, regulatory fees, professional indemnity costs. Yeah, so stuff going up. Electricity, energy is a really big one, isn't it? I know folks comparing year on year, particularly businesses that are energy dependent, massive increases. So really hard to kind of deal with some of those things, and really important to kind of think about the options that we've got for things that we maybe think are beyond our control. So we'll get into some of that today. Great. Any other thoughts? I think there's some really relevant stuff there. So thank you for that.
Our manufacturing supply chain is in tatters for caravan.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
So is that supply chain stuff going back to kind of whether things are available, materials, costs, and all those kinds of things?
Materials, but COVID killed them, and they still haven't recovered. Yeah. And with the costs going up, they're still way behind. There's units that are partially built, but they can't get glass to finish them off. And obviously you can't get them out of the production line because they all need to be in the factory, so you can't ship them out, so they're at a complete standstill. Yeah, so that's massive, isn't it? It has a massive impact on certainly cash, because you can't get the throughput, you can't get the things sold. So yeah, really, really relevant stuff. So we're all going to be facing some different challenges as we go into these economic times. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we give ourselves that kind of headroom that gets us to carry through it? So here we go. If I said this once, I said it 100 times, and you will all know this, but turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king or queen, I should say. So cash is everything, right? Cash is the thing that's going to help us get through all of those challenges and get us in a really great position to maybe take some opportunities as well. So the question that we pose to people, is have you got a consistent source of cash in the business? Ideally, one that's generated internally, and we'll come back to that, that can fuel the growth of your business. So Jim Collins wrote some amazing books. One of the books he wrote was Great by Choice. Within Great by Choice, he talks about a thing called return on luck. There's quite a big concept, but one of the things that I take out of that is, if you're covered, if you've got good cash cover, if you've got good cash in the business, when good or bad fortune comes your way, you're able to react to it. You're able to do something with it. You haven't got that, it makes it super hard to kind of make the most of those luck opportunities that come along, all those luck challenges that come along. So really important that we kind of prepare ourselves in advance for those things. And really what we aim for with our clients is, have you got 3 to 10 times the cash reserves that your competitors might have? Because you put yourself in that position, and then when things happen, when opportunities and challenges come along, you're the business that survives. Maybe you can pick up stuff from those businesses that haven't got that level of cover that, might give you some opportunities to step in and grow. So that's really what we're aiming for. So let's get into some practical stuff. Let's talk about some things we can do. One of the things that we really focus on is a thing called the cash conversion cycle. So some of you might know that, some of you might not. Cash conversion cycle, really important, really fundamentally, how long does it take for a pound that you spend on your business to work its way through and back into your business? We use a bunch of tools in scaling up. We've got a really fantastic one-page tool called the Cash Acceleration Strategy tool, or cash tool. We'll share this, so I'll make sure this comes out on email to you guys. You've got a tool that you can take away and use. And so the tool is something that we use to really help people focus in on all of the elements of their cash conversion cycle. What typically happens is that people focus on, apology for the quality there, it's not great, but people tend to focus on D, the billing and payment cycle. So we tend to go back to finance and say, when's the cash coming in? What are you doing about getting cash in? What are you doing about cash going out? And that's where we spend all of our time and energy. But that's really only a part of the total cash conversion cycle. So the 4 elements are obviously the sales cycle. So how long it takes you to make a sale can have a big impact on whether the cash is in the business or out of the business. Your make, production, or inventory cycle, so how long you've got money tied up in the production or the inventory of your goods and services, and then the delivery cycle, so how long it takes to get that stuff out to market.
then leading to the payments and billing cycle. So all of those 4 elements there are things that we encourage people to look at on a regular basis and say, okay, so how do we improve those? What can we do to get those cycle times shorter? Because the shorter the time, the more time the cash is in our bank, in our business, not in somebody else's business. So the way the tool works is we look at each of those cycles and we look at 3 ways of correcting them. So this is a nice one that you can take away and look at. So for each of those cycles, think about, how can I shorten it? What can I do? Where can I take a day back from here or there? Could it be that, the sales team could just could accelerate their closing process a little quicker, a day here or a day there? Is it that we can just reduce our work in progress or our production lead times through lean thinking? Are there manufacturing things that we know we probably should be doing, but we're maybe not great at? Maybe there's some processes that we can sharpen up just to reduce that production time. We'll talk a bit more about billing with Neil, but are there things that we can do around the kind of going to market side of our business? Are there things that marketing can do to accelerate things? Are there things that we can do through distribution that just help us to shave a day or 2 off? Because all of that is cash straight to our bottom line or straight back into the business cash flow. And then also, can we think about reducing mistakes? So one of the things that really frustrates people is when their bills come back to them and they've not been paid because maybe there's an error, or maybe there's maybe it's got the wrong person, maybe it's got the wrong address on it, maybe it's got the wrong time. When you date your invoicing can be really important. So can we reduce the mistakes that we have going out? And it seems really basic, but believe it or not, these things really kind of do happen, and we find that people kind of put off paying people whose invoices are typically not that accurate. Maybe there's a credit system that has to go through, which is always a hassle for people. And then thinking about the business model, so just come back and look at the whole business model and take a look at, okay, so are we doing things the way we're doing them now and taking the time we're taking just because it's the way we've always done it? That's the classic one, isn't it? That's just the way we do things. In difficult times, we've got to do different things in order to get different results, and we really have to kind of think hard about what are the things that we think we've either thought about and dismissed in the past, or things that we know we ought to be doing that could really sharpen up that business model to bring those times in to keep cash retained in the business. So really useful tool, really practical tool. Like I say, I'll share it and you guys can use that in the business pretty much straight away. I would encourage you to kind of revisit that for each of the cycles, at least quarterly with the teams. So give you a case study, really famous case study is Dell. So if you went back to the early 90s, Dell was effectively growing broke. So Dell were, it took them 63 days for $1 that went out of the business for it to come back in. And they were really exponentially growing because, home PCs were taking off, office PCs were taking off, and they just didn't have the cash around them to fuel that growth. They brought in a guy called Tom Meredith as CFO, as their first sort of CFO. And he really looked at how we could improve that cash cycle by effectively changing their business model. So where their business model was, the sort of classic, take an order, go off and process the order, make the thing, supply the thing, and then get the money back in, which was taking 63 days. He flipped that on its head completely. And if you bought a computer from Dell, you basically pay up front. So you basically switch things around, tell people, okay, that's what you want, you can spec it up. That's the price, pay the money, and then we go out and we start sourcing those pieces, that equipment, we assemble it, we bring that back and we deliver it to you. And we've got your money in our bank way ahead of us having to pay for those goods, because we've also got terms with the people that are supplying us. So he actually took that 63 days outstanding cash and made it a negative -21. So he was getting cash in 21 days before he had to pay that cash out. Now, this is an amazing case study, and I think it's really relevant. And I've done this in businesses, and the businesses I've done this with have always said, we could never do that. That's like the automatic thing, right? We couldn't do that. It's not the way our industry works. Do you know what? It works a lot more often than you think. We've done this with businesses, and the impact on cash has been massive. The impact on customers has been minimal. So something to really think about. And kind of the phrase, they call it the phrase that pays here, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, growth needs to fund cash. You don't want growth to suck cash out of your business. You want your growth to fund cash. So that's a really great case study, something to think about. Our aim with our clients and with you guys is really to help you fund the growth of your business without having to go external and to dilute your equity in your business. And one of the ways we can do that is to think about getting your customers to pay for it. So exactly like the Dell case study, there are a ton of other examples. We borrow from this book. So Customer Funded Business by John Mullins, really excellent book. Gives you, if you get a chance to read it, it will give you a ton of ideas about ways that you can use your customers to fund your company's growth. Some really big case studies in there. If you think about things like Costco. So Costco, really great big box retailer. You know, they actually make more profit from their monthly membership fees than they do necessarily from the goods that they sell and make a margin on. So think about, you know, options like that. Think about, you know, subscription businesses, things like Airbnb, where, you know, you're going to pay to be listing your product as well as paying a fee for using the service. And think about things like Netflix, you know, all cash up front, all in advance on a recurring income model. Really, really helpful ways of bringing cash in up front and funding that growth without needing to go externally. So that's our tip in terms of a book to take away and read and have a look at a bunch of ways that you can think about getting the customers to fund your growth. Okay, racing through. Any questions on this one so far, or should we crack on? We good? Great, good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Neil. As I said, Neil, super expert coach. I'm going to let Neil do his slides there, and he's going to talk us through some more tools. So Neil, over to you.
Yeah, many thanks indeed, Leon. And one of the concepts that is so powerful around managing your cash, managing your profitability, is this notion of the power of one. And it comes from a gentleman by the name of Alan Mills. And actually, Alan wrote the cash chapter within the Scaling Up book that Leon mentioned earlier on. And in the Power of One chapter, he gives this really straightforward concept on 7 different levers that you're able to lever to be able to impact on the amount of cash that you have in your business and your profitability in the business as well. So just want to go through that. Leon, if you just move the slide forward, please. And once more.
There we go.
Around that. So 7 different areas that we're going to focus in on here and just touch on each one of these. First up, price, and different strategies you can do around price right now. Next one is all around volume. Then you've got the impact you can make on costs of sales or cost of goods sold, your overheads. Then when we look at our working capital in the business, that's then looking at your accounts receivable, sometimes known as your debtors days, how good you are collecting your money. If you are a manufacturing business, you may have stock. If you're a retailer, you have stock or inventory. If you maybe are a professional services company, you may have work in progress. So whatever that is, that's going to be your inventory, stock days of work in progress. And then you will have, no doubt, suppliers that you have to pay at some stage. So if we can just go forward again, please, and then look at the elements around price. And in many respects, when we think about it, people are not necessarily logical when it comes to the way we think about price. They are psychological. We actually more often than not, do use a bit of logic, but we also use emotion. So this case study that is coming up next is all around just the psychology of how you might go and price up your goods. And this has been studied. It could be a wine list that you go to in a restaurant or at a pizza. And what you'll notice here is that this particular business, I think they're based in Hong Kong, have put the most expensive items on their menu first. And as opposed to traditionally, you might have your cheapest items first and then the most expensive items towards the end. The same on the wine list. It's been proven that if you put the most expensive wines at the top of the list, psychologically, people are going to move towards some of your more expensive wines than towards the very cheapest wines that you may have to offer or traditionally have on a wine list. This simple exercise of changing this up, so putting the most expensive items first and the cheapest items last, led to increase in revenues of 35%. And just again, psychologically, people were going to go for the higher, slightly higher item, maybe not necessarily always to the highest item. And certainly if you're in an expensive wine shop, probably not the most expensive bottle of wine, but are more likely to go to the wine that's certainly not more expensive than the cheapest offering. So that's some areas around price. There's a lot of other things that I want you to think around pricing right now. I think a lot of us are worried about if we put up our prices that we may lose business. Our insight is more often than not, when you put up prices, the people who are more likely to are those that are maybe the clients that are probably the ones, in truthfulness, you wouldn't mind losing anyway. They're very price sensitive. They're probably the ones who bitch and moan about anything. And actually, if you're providing a great service and you've got a great offer, most of your Ray clients will live with it and actually take that price increase. So again, it's being able to really move on that. So different areas that we can think around price. If you move the next slide, please, Leon. So interesting, when I come back to a software we're going to be using called the Cash Flow Story, we can then see the impact that price has on both cash and volume as well, and the relationship between that. But the second lever on the Power of One is all around different thoughts or tactics or strategies around increasing your volume, So number one, get to work on making sure that you've got the marketing working well and that you've got your sales working as well as it can be, your sales processes, your sales training, making sure that you are maybe having a system in place like a CRM system, that you're always following up on the right leads, that you're prioritizing those businesses that you want to go after. So right now is a really good time to really get crystal clear about who is it that you want to do business with. How then do you just start to get to marketing effectively to those people to uncover their pain or their needs, being able to then follow up with a really powerful sales call, have a good CRM system so you can keep tabs of that. And Keith Ferrazzi, great book, Never Eat Alone. One of the things that he advocates is building out relationships. So if you've targeted the top 25 companies that you really love to do business with in 2023, just get them written down. Simple thing, just put in your notebook or whatever. Who are the top 25 businesses that we were able to get them as customers over the next 12 months would have a significant impact on our volume and our revenue growth. Next slide, please. So the next Power of One is all around cost of goods sold, or cost of sales around it. So again, there's ways here that, and I'm certainly very aware right now that we are living with increased inflation. Prices are running ahead. So one of the areas that we may want to get to work on, and certainly the manufacturing companies that I work with and the other clients I work with, is number one, what can we do to renegotiate our price and terms with suppliers? What can we do to go and revisit our electricity supply and making sure that that's probably going to be one of the highest increases right now, that we can either renegotiate around that or come up with more advantageous terms. So get to work on renegotiating these areas. Number two, this is about looking at all the costs in the business, looking where there's potentially wastage as well, so that you're doing a level best to identify the savings that you could be making around that. And probably most importantly, in terms of improving cost of goods, is identifying where you've got wastage, where you've got inefficient systems, you're doing reworks around areas, you're having to overcome mistakes, and that's taking time. All of these have an impact on your cost of goods or your gross profitability. So having great processes in place, getting lean around the way that you think, lean thinking, constantly improving your processes will all help in terms of improving your cost of goods sold. Next thing we're going to look at are your overheads. And that will be around looking at the costs in your business, the overheads that you have specifically. And here, what we'd advocate is making sure that you've got people who are aligned around your different overheads, your different line items, to make sure that if you've got significant costs, and it could be anything from the consumables that you may have, it could be anything from people just taking care of or shining a light on some of the outgoings that you may have, transportation, petrol, as I said a few minutes ago, electricity. Power of just having one person who is accountable for each line, and even if they've got a target of saving 5% on each one, can have a real powerful impact on your bottom line. Equally, have a good look at your team. Right now, as we go into challenging times, it's always a good time to look at your resource. Are you carrying dead weight? Have you got people who aren't necessarily delivering or being productive across your company? Would you enthusiastically rehire all of your employees? And by that, I mean, there are going to be, unfortunately, some that aren't playing the game right now, that don't live the values of the organization, aren't productive. And go back to the old adage that one great player, one A player, is equivalent of 3 good people, or 3 average people, I should say. So just re-looking at that and seeing if there's some deadwood we can bring out the business that are costing the organization right now. So that's overheads. The next thing we're going to have a look at is 3 areas that are on the working capital side of the business. The first one is all around accounts receivable days, or sometimes called a debtors days. And from my experience, this is an area that is a simple fix, but sometimes it's not a process that we've really got down.
Neil just frozen there for a second. That's not me, is it? That's Neil. Classic.
It's Neil, Liam. It's
yeah,
Neil,
thanks, Chris. We'll give him a second just to jump back in. Neil, we lost you for a second.
Did you?
Yeah, just at the start of the
Apologies,
slide.
everyone. My satellite is my broadband is driven by Elon Musk's satellite dish. So from time to time, yeah, we've changed satellites. So thanks for that. So, Leon, where did I drop off?
Just at the start of the slide.
Just the start slide. Thank you. So going back to the importance of focusing on your accounts receivable, and first up, making sure that you've got one person who is very clear about this is their accountability. And I know a lot of folk, this is something that rather tread on hot coals and have to phone people up asking for money. But one of the things is making sure that you've got a very good relationship with whoever it is, and your customer is accountable for their accounts payable. Make sure that you right now are looking at all your customers. You can use something like Risk or Credit Safe just to see how they're performing. I've had 1 or 2 of my clients in the last 12 months who've been significantly impacted because one of their customers has gone down on them. Just making sure that you've got that. Revisit your terms, T's and C's. This is a good one, just in terms of maybe going back to your solicitors and just getting your T's and T's tightened up around that. If you've always had 28 days or 56 days or whatever it is in terms of T's and C's, maybe just think about getting to 14 days or even 7 days and just asking for people to pay you more quickly. If you don't ask, you don't get around that. So that's something to do that. If it's an area where people are maybe reluctant to pay you, consider prepayment discounts, early payment discounts. If you've got a bit of cash in the business already, you can afford to do that. And a couple of other ones, just simple ones to think about. If you're still sending out invoices, send out your invoices on a different color piece of paper, maybe yellow or blue. By that, then you can make sure that whoever's the accounts receivable, accounts payable person, when you ask for it, you can say, oh, by the way, yeah, ours is the yellow one. So it makes it easier for them to find it. And another tip, just maybe 10 days after you sent out your invoice, give a quick call to the accounts payable clerk and just say, is there any reason why you won't be able to pay us in full this particular month? So is any mistake or anything that maybe they prevaricate around, you've got that covered off early. Okay, so that's around accounts receivable days. In terms of our accounts payable days, that's when we have to pay our suppliers. I'd always advocate that we maintain, really good relationships with our suppliers. So don't try and push out terms too much, but just make sure that you pay at least to terms. I can't tell you how many times I found that invoice comes in and someone in the team just paying it straight away when actually the terms are 30 days or 60 days. So just make sure that, again, you're rigorous around that. Don't pay out more, too quickly. But equally, if you are, obviously, if you're in cash challenges, probably all been there, it's being able to have that conversation with your suppliers, just saying, can we set up a stage payment or come up with a plan to help us through, maybe a tough cash position. So different areas around that. And I think the final one on working capital is all around making sure that we are paying good attention to our inventory or to our stock, making sure that, again, we are alive to that. Again, for the manufacturing companies, we'll probably have somebody who is accountable for the amount of stock in the organization. And once you've got that, then you can put in a place. If we've got 100 stock days, then what's the plan to get that down to 80 days? Or what's the plan to get it down to 75 days? Just, again, having that plan, finding out where is the dead stock or the redundant stock that we can maybe do a sale on or move through the business is important. And then, again, we can learn from more sophisticated organizations. I would imagine Toyota, they'll have a just-in-time model, so they don't have much stock. Whenever it is, their wheels that they're manufacturing will arrive on the day that they're due to fit on that particular car. And then increasingly, with some of the manufacturers and wholesalers I'm working with, we're looking at the drop shipping model as well. Why do you need to hold expensive items in a warehouse or whatever when actually you can drop ship as soon as an order comes in and that goes straight out to your customer? So some ideas around that. So what I'm going to do now, Leon, if I can share my screen around that. I've mentioned earlier on that there's a piece of software that we can leverage. Just share my screen. Share that. Can everyone see what looks like a few bar graphs?
Yeah, got that.
Yes, excellent. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, Alan Miltz wrote the cash chapter in Scaling Up. Alan has also designed out an amazing piece of software. He's called it the Cash Flow Story. And simply, when we take one of our clients' numbers from their latest set of results, and we can either do this from their annual performance or we can do it on a quarterly basis. We then take from that spreadsheet, we have an input template, and then as soon as you put into the numbers into the cash flow story report, then we're able to then start doing some analysis around it. So let me just move out of the way a second. Where have we got to here? Just trying to navigate my way around on here too. So that's just checking that's okay. I think, Leon, just bear with me a sec. I might have just to log back in again. So
Yes, no
it's just taking a timeout. While I do that, just have a think for 1 second on what is your most pressing cash challenge at the moment, and just have a think about that, and we'll put it into the chat bar. I think just have a think about that. Back on it now. Can everyone see what looks like the bar chart again? Quick thumbs up.
You got it. Yeah,
You've got it. Great. So once we've got the data from our clients, we're able to very straightforwardly see what the overall story is. And that's why Alan calls it a cash flow story. He talks about four chapters that we need to understand. And chapter 1 is all around profit. The summary that we're looking at the moment gives us the chapters of our profit story, our balance sheet story, and then we can have a deeper dive into the profitability of your organization. So what we're able to see here are trends over the last 3 years in Mylock's business. And this is just a fictional business, but Mylock has got a business that's grown out to 24 million in revenues. They've grown by 2.5 million. They've improved their gross margins. They've improved their operating. And we can see here what sort of percentage growth as well. So by all accounts, Mylock's business in terms of revenue growth is very impressive. Mylock is doing a great job in that. And we can see here that the different ratios, where it's green, that's good news. Where it's red, that's not so good news. So when we're doing a debrief to Mylock, we can say, Mylock, you've done a really good job in growing your revenues. You've grown your gross margin, good news. You've taken care in terms of moving that out. Overheads, and this is what Leon was saying a few minutes ago, has grown out, but growth sucks cash. Mylock made a decision to increase a focus on more team members or whatever. So there might be a reason behind that. So we're able to see all of the profitability on one page. And the other great thing about Cash Flow Story is it makes it easy for people who by default are non-financial managers. They don't like the numbers. It just makes it really easy for people to understand numbers in a straightforward way. And that's what we'll often bring to a quarterly planning session. So Mylock is doing a great job in growing his organization. However, when we come to working capital, and just to remind you that working capital is worked out by taking your accounts receivable, how much you're owed, adding in your inventory, your stock, and then taking away your accounts payable. That gives you your working capital trends. So we can see here, and this exercise that Leon mentioned a few minutes ago around the cash conversion cycle, we can see trends here in terms of where Mylock has his accounts payable over the last 3 years. His inventory days, which we've seen have gone up over the last 3 years to 78 days, and then his accounts receivable days. And the impact of holding more stock over the last year, we see he's holding more stock in the cash conversion cycle, paying credits about the same amount of time, but it's taking Mylock an extra 8 days in order to collect his cash. So that growth in both number of days we're holding stock and the amount of time it's taken him to collect his money has meant that the working capital days has gone out from 55 days to 69 days. And when you've got a business of this size, it has a real impact on the cash position, almost to the tune of 800,000. So one of the things that Alan Mills talks about in terms of this notion that growth sucks cash is that we can be growing our revenues, but as Leon said, revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity, but something to with profitable, but cash is reality. Cash is where we are. There's no negotiation around that at all. And as we grow our company, if we're not doing a good job of focusing on our working capital, then it means that we have to go and borrow more money to fund the growth of our organization. And that's when we get down to the ratios for this case study and Mylock's case study, that while everything looked good in revenues, when it comes to working capital, then we're taking longer to collect money, we're holding more stock. Yes, we've kind of just maybe had to ask our suppliers for a bit more clemency, but we've seen our working capital days go out significantly. And working capital, this is, again, you could argue, is not good operational practice from where Mylock has been. So this has meant that he's probably going to have to the bank to raise more money to fund his growth. And of course, the bank can see Mylock's cash position every single day. And on this example, Mylock, when we go into this in a deeper dive, the bank have got in his business twice as much money invested in their lending than Mylock has with his equity. which means that they're concerned that if they're going to continue to fund the growth of Mylok, will he be able to afford to pay them back? And that's why in the book, Mylok was quite shocked when he thought he was doing well and told everyone down at the country club he was doing well. And then the naughty boy, he was in the naughty boys room from the bank when he was sent in the special team to say, we need you to have a plan in order to make sure that you're capable of paying our cash back. So that's, again, we'll have a deeper dive on that in a future session, but that's where funding comes in. So just want to spend a few minutes honing in to what I was talking about around the power of one. And you can see here that if we were just to have a 1% improvement, just a 1% improvement in every single part of Mylok's operation, what that impact would have, not only to his cash position, and he comes into the year with a cash flow of 300,000 and an operating profit of 2.3 million, what will it have as an impact? So let's just put that into there now. So by just focusing 1%, these idea of marginal gains on each of these different areas, what impact does that have? And we can see just a 1% improvement on each of those areas is good for cash, brings in an extra 600,000 to Mylok's business, great for operating profit as well. So you can see here the adjusted position around those strategies or those tactics we've put in place. So that's where we start with when we go through this, but we actually then actually say, let's scenario plan this out a little more. What if we were to put up our prices by, let's say, 5%? What would be the impact for cash? Well, it's very good for cash and it's great for profit. Okay, could we afford, if we put up our prices by 5%, to see our volumes go backwards? What if we were to lose 10% of our volume because there was a raft of our customers who were more price sensitive to that, and you maybe wouldn't accept that price increase? And you say, actually, we could still afford to lose 10% volume and we'd still be ahead on our cash position and ahead on our profit. So you can use that as a scenario. What if we got to work on just improving our prices in terms of the negotiation we did to buy more effectively? We reduce waste across the business by 3%. Again, good for cash around that. What if we had a team who were looking at our overheads and around that with more detail, and we had a 3% reduction in our overheads? Again, you can look at that scenario plan. We're putting in now a goal to reduce our accounts receivable days by 10 days. Again, good for cash. And again, just what happens if we reduce our inventory days? So these scenario plans, and this is typically what we would do with an organization, brings out a plan where in this scenario, we could look at improving our cash flow position by 2 million and our impact on our operating profit by 951. And then literally have strategy and tactics across the business and different people who are focused on that. A very powerful tool that allows organizations to get clear on their cash position. As coaches with teams, we can then look at how we can scenario plan out with your numbers, not this case study, to do that. And then the final point is that when we're working with organizations like Mylok, they're interested in how we're not only going to scale a company, but the impact on the valuation of their organization. So this is when we then get into the business value indicator and what is the impact of that scenario planning against their targeted business value and how that leads to an improved valuation. So that's for another session. Don't want to dwell on that too much. Leon, if I can go back now just to the PowerPoints around that, that would be good. I think we just got a few more PowerPoints to share. I've gone through the cash flow story. This is something that you're able to access through us as coaches. Leon and I had a quick catch up before the call. Normally, to invest in the cash flow story and have a 1 hour debrief on the scenarios that we've gone through would be an investment of £1,000. For those of you on the call today, we're more than happy to offer you the opportunity to share your numbers. We'll put that into the cash flow story software. We'll create a report for you, and then we'll do an hour of time to do a full download on the report and run some Power of One analysis around with you. So you've got some scenario planning that you could put into your business. Simply, if that's of interest to you, just email us back and say, love to find out more about this particular offer. Do that today, and we will be delighted to share that offer, which is just a one-time offer for today. Leon, I think that's me. I think I've just gone through the areas of the Power of One and the cash flow story. So back to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Neil. That's great. So just want to wrap things up, and we've got some time if there are any questions as well. But essentially what we want you to think about and come away from this with is some stuff you can do. Okay, so we've got this real kind of focus on getting things done, taking action, because that's how we're gonna make progress. So can you really understand, or do you understand now the financial levers that directly influence the cash through your business? And can you help to understand what a small improvement in each of them might be in terms of the impact on your cash? So oftentimes with these things, we sort of avoid them because we try and go for the drastic things. We go for the 10% price rise, or we go for the 50% overhead reduction, or whatever it happens to be. Actually, marginal gains, as Neil said, a percent here or a day there can have a direct impact on your cash. So really important. Do you understand the levers, and do you know which ones really have an impact if you just tweak them to improve that cash position for you? And it all comes back to that kind of protecting yourself and being in great shape going into the times that we've got ahead. There's a notion of creating a Power of One team. So have you got a team of people that once you've got that Power of One exercise understood, they can be focused on making sure they're doing the things that deliver the improvements that need to be delivered to improve that cash, and having them work on it regularly and KPI'd against it. And then, run a cash conversion cycle exercise. We'll share the template. Really useful tool, really practical, simple tool. Check back in with it at least quarterly, if not more regularly, just to say, okay, how can we just shave a little bit of time off of our cash conversion time so that we get cash in the business and we keep it in our business rather than leaving it in somebody else's. Final question, really. Feel free to come off mute and talk about it, or put it in the chat. Given the conversation and the stuff we've shared today, what do you believe is the number one thing that you could do to improve the cash in your business? So let's have a conversation or a discussion in the chat about what you believe from today's session is the number one thing you could do to improve cash in the business.
I need to analyze my numbers a little bit more.
Yeah, tell us a bit more about that. What are you thinking?
My approach generally is an Excel spreadsheet or a back of an envelope jobby to try and predict the future. I've attempted to do varying kind of scenarios, but we've got a kind of a multifaceted business, so it's not quite as simple as just one business. It's multiples. So I sometimes get a bit lost within the whole data and a bit overwhelmed with just the sheer quantity of data to look at. And I go, I don't know where to start.
Yeah, really, really good point. Really common, that people have that, particularly when, everyone's business is fairly complicated. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to get there are some really simple numbers, and don't get me wrong, you shouldn't necessarily know this stuff because you run a business, right? You're not necessarily from a finance background, so you shouldn't necessarily know this. What we want to do is we want to help people see what are the basic numbers that are really useful, really important, that you can action and do some stuff with. So that's what we're trying to get to here. Yeah. I think if you're feeling overwhelmed with it, just take a step back, try and pull out the simple numbers that you've got for each of the business units, and then see where the impact's happening. But if nothing else, I hope that this is going to make you think and revisit those numbers, because it's super important. What you don't want to do is get into a point where things have really, from an economic perspective, really got tight, and then try and do it. That's the wrong time to do it.
From looking at the slides, I go into too much detail. So I think, like you say, step back, have a look at just a box, their kind of main big numbers, and then go from there. Rather, I just get a little bit kind of zoomed in. Yeah, great, really good tip. Thank you for that. Lindsay, you've mentioned price increases. Go on, Lindsay.
Yeah, I did, and I for me, I just thought what was quite prominent was we're probably not brave enough because we're a charity. We think everything has to be charitable, and therefore we worry about increasing our prices. And actually, just that really short demonstration about we're really good at budgeting as well. I have to say we are genuinely really good at it. But when it comes to increasing prices, I think we forget sometimes that yes, we're a charity for the beneficiary, but we're not a charity for all suppliers. And I think we probably need to revisit that. So yeah, it's helpful. Thank you.
It's a great point. Neil, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think that it is often that courage, isn't it? Thinking, my goodness, we put up our prices by 5%, you know, and I think it's more so, Lindsay, if you're a social venture or a non-profit or a charity, about they're there to do good, but equally you can only do good if you've got, you know, the right amount of revenue and you can keep the organization going. So I think often it is, and maybe it is opportune right now because everyone gets the fact that we're in a cost of living crisis, that's inflation that's there. So I think you're able to maybe construct a letter and say, look, we would like to, wherever possible, trying to keep our costs controlled, but you know they've gone up by 6% over last year, and we're having to pass those prices on to you, but no more than that. You know, we recognize that as well. So often I help organizations just construct that letter, because that's where they find it. Well, where do we start? How do we notify people that we're going to be putting prices up? And if you do it in a good way, people will say, "Oh, well, that makes sense." Around that as well. Does that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Neil.
Okay.
I'll just echo with what Lindsay's just said. I think it's actually being a bit braver in what we do from a cost perspective.
What do you mean by that then, Alex? What's on your mind?
Well, we're a charity as well, and
okay,
that's what Lindsay had said in terms of trying to make it affordable for our participants.
Yeah,
we have commercial streams. So is there an opportunity if we could fund those that maybe wouldn't be able to participate at that level because of the cost of it? So it's actually safeguarding that they can still join, but actually the ones that maybe can afford to join, it's looking at a price increase for them. So you don't alienate your customers.
Yes, there's that. The other thing around price increase as well is it doesn't necessarily always need to be that physical pricing, but it can also just be just like McDonald's do so well. You know, that notion, would you like fries with that? What upselling can you do? So that's for you. What are the other things that for your more profitable clients or those that maybe have got that, they're less price sensitive, is what upselling can you, what are the services or things that you can do that's going to be a benefit to them that ultimately will raise your average pound sale?
Absolutely.
Right, and then Gail, you've just mentioned about speaking to suppliers to renegotiate prices, reducing overheads where possible. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Gail, but I think, you know, really relevant. We've covered quite a lot around that.
Yeah, just to say, I also work with Lindsay, and we receive funding from different places to provide services. We're looking at going back to the funders because some of the funding is long term, so it's a 3-4 year contract. We're looking at going back to the funders and saying, in the current light of the increase in the national living wage, we're having to then also increase. We run a ranking system for the salaries, and we've had to increase the ranks above the national living wage, so that the people that have got the more responsibility are also getting an increase. But the impact is that our margins are decreasing on that funding contract. So we're having to be brave and look at going back to the funders and saying, in light of this salary increase, is there any way that there's more funding so that we can continue to deliver the quality service that we're currently giving? Because as it stands, it could result in us running at a loss for some contracts.
Yeah, it's totally valid, and I think it's to Neil's point. If you do it the right way, if you get, you know, if you've got a good relationship with people, you build the case and the argument for it. I think particularly at the moment, people know that this stuff's coming. They kind of expect it. They get it. They're facing it themselves. Doesn't mean they're always going to say yes. So, you know, there's some negotiation maybe to be had, and also, you know, just think about those marginal gains. The thing about price the thing about price, if you can do it, is it goes straight to your bottom line. Price is like the gift that keeps giving, because it costs you nothing and it works every time. It goes straight to the bottom line. So just have a think about that. You do need to be brave. You know, maybe think about the timing of things. You know, if you put a price rise through like 13, 14 months ago, then technically you haven't put a price rise through for 2 years, right? So, you know, just think about the way you kind of position this stuff with people. And you know, oftentimes people are really reasonable and they get it, they understand it. So yeah, really good points. Any other points anyone would like to make? If not, I think we're just about on time, just slightly before time. So look, thanks to everyone for joining today. From our perspective, you know, we love having these sessions and sharing stuff with people. We genuinely think now is the time to be acting on this stuff. Don't leave it any longer. Don't leave it too late. Make sure that you have that kind of headroom and cover, good understanding of your numbers, good understanding of the options, and explore some different things, try some different stuff in order that you can kind of weather any storms that might come, or take some opportunities, because there will be loads and loads of opportunities as well as things unfold. And as we say there, keep scaling. You know, we want businesses to carry on growing and being successful and to thrive, not just to survive through the next period. So thanks again to everyone for joining. I will send out that cash conversion tool so you can have a look at that. We've got another session. We run these webinars at the end of each month. So the last Friday of each month, you can have a look on the website. I'll send you the link to them as well. And the recordings will go on there as well for anybody that wants to look at it back or has missed anything. So if there's no other questions, then we'll just say thanks very much. And we look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks, Ben.